Good afternoon, everybody. It's the Israel Brief brought to you by Lay of the Land. I'm Rolene Marks, and these are your top stories. The diplomatic offensive to maintain the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is continuing, and earlier today, Israel welcomed Dominic Raab. He is the Foreign Secretary from the United Kingdom to our country. He has met with our Foreign Minister, Gabi Ashkenazi, and the two of them discussed ways to keep the ceasefire in place, as well as the threat posed to the region by Iran and Iran's gaining of a possible nuclear weapon and the propensity for them to use their proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, to try and plunge the region into conflict. Also notable is that, and many of you have asked, what are our ties like with Arab countries that signed the Abraham Accords? What are they like now that they've kind of had to go through their first major test? Well, we do have it assured that tests have been passed, and ties with Arab countries who signed the accords, that is the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Sudan, and Bahrain, are still intact. In fact, they also don't want to see Hamas gaining any more power in the region. And yesterday, Israel welcomed the United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, to the country, and he held lengthy meetings with the Prime Minister Netanyahu, with Foreign Minister Ashkenazi and Defense Minister Gantz. He then went on to Ramallah to meet with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, and in that meeting he announced that the United States will be reopening its consulate in Jerusalem. Now, what we do have to remember is that the mission to Israel serves both Israel and the Palestinian people, and in the past it has been absorbed into the embassy. To open a consulate separate to the embassy is a move that has been discussed between Israel and the United States, and still needs Israel's approval for it to go ahead. Also being reiterated was the fact that the United States will provide aid to Gaza. However, it must go through the Palestinian Authority and not through Hamas. Now, speaking of the Gaza Strip, a very, very interesting and telling event happened yesterday. The director of UNRWA, that's the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which is mandated to look after Palestinian refugees, their director, Matthias Schmale, was interviewed on Channel 12 TV, and he lauded the sophistication and the precision of the IDF. He said that food and medicine continue to come into the strip, and that the IDF were very sophisticated in carrying out pinpoint precise attacks. He said even though the attacks were more vicious, they really, and with the exception of a few mistakes, they really went all out to ensure as little human or civilian casualties as possible. Now, very interesting today is Schmale took to Twitter to walk back his comments, apologizing for offending Hamas, saying that he is very, very sorry for any hurt that he might have caused to Hamas, for saying that Israel tried to avoid as many civilian casualties as possible. Now, knowing how Hamas operates within the Gaza Strip and that they are a theocracy, one only shudders to think how they got Mr. Schmale to retract or apologize for his comments. More further afield, in Monday's broadcast, we brought you the tragic and horrific story of the Israeli family who were killed while their cable car in the lake region of Italy, the cable snapped and 14 people plummeted to their death, including an Israeli family of 5 with one survivor, a 5-year-old little boy called Eitan. Well, news coming in from Italy earlier today is that 3 people have been arrested and charged with manslaughter, as it was found that it was a deliberate intention to stop the emergency brake, which could have been life-saving and could have prevented this tragedy from happening. Yesterday, His Holiness Pope Francis sent his prayers to all families of those who lost loved ones, and singled out little Eitan for special prayers, seeing he lost his parents, his sibling, and his great-grandparents. It has been noted that Eitan's condition is improving and the bodies of his family have been flown to Israel for burial. Our thoughts and prayers are with all who perished and their families and loved ones. May their memories be blessed. Those are your top stories making headlines in Israel today. Don't forget that if you are viewing us on a Lotl site, please give us a like or a follow. Share our content. We really appreciate it when you do. If you're viewing us on our YouTube channel at The Israel Brief, please do us a solid and click on that red subscribe button. You can also follow us on Twitter at LayofTheLand5. And don't forget our original content up on our website at www.layoftheland.online. So with the Wednesday edition of the Israel Brief, I'm Rolene Marks. These are your headlines, and we'll meet again tomorrow.